prizes to give away. We're literally giving them away right now just because you decided to come out here tonight to share your time. So our first prize is a Zhun gimbal, and that is going to Justin Koblik. I hope I'm saying that. There we go. Is this Justin over here? Come on up, man. Come and get your gimbal. Also, my editor told me that this guy is my doppelganger, apparently. Do we want to, what's the audience? Look, put your hand up if this is my brother. Yeah? There we go. There we go. It's not nepotism. I'm not giving my brother the gimbal, I promise. Okay, he won it randomly. There you go. And we'll get Jon to give away our second prize here.
It's a bit of a tough name to pronounce. I see why you're telling me to say it. Jithan Viajanan for the Vista gift card.
There we go.
Yeah. Sorry if I butchered that. Come on up. So there's a Vista gift card for $150. Yeah. Congrats, man.
All right, so we're just gonna jump right into it. We have some pretty amazing and special guests here tonight. We have my co-host of this event, someone who's put so much effort into getting us these incredible props, this location. This is Jon Simo, good friend of mine. Everyone, please. Another one of my favorite humans on this planet, one of the most brutally honest people on the internet, wildly creative, and just a genuinely great human being. This is Patrick Tommaso. And the angel that's sitting over here, the wildly creative and so immensely talented in so many areas of design and video editing and creation and filming and color, all of it. You'll find out in a bit. Becki Peckham. So we're going to just kind of jump into a little bit of our stories. So I'd like everybody to introduce themselves. Tell me a little bit of your content journey in under 2 minutes or so. Oh, and Jon has one thing to say.
Just a quick thing. Yeah. So to anyone that showed up late, we are giving away a brand new Lumix S5 Mark II. Just want to quickly go over how to win that. So you have to take a phone photo or video here tonight. You have to post it on your Instagram using our hashtag, which is WeTheCreators002. And in the caption, you have to write why you deserve to win this camera. The cutoff tonight is going to be around 9:15, 9:30. So make sure to get your entries in before then. Obviously, please pay attention to us as we're talking, but also find time to upload if you want to win the camera. This camera's worth $3,000. It's an amazing, amazing camera. So good luck to everyone. And for any content you guys post, please use the hashtag so we can see it, which is just, again, WeTheCreators002. Tag us, share it, and help spread the word so we can do more of these because they're a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to start with Patrick. Tell me your story.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I'm Patrick Tommaso. I'm Gerald Undun's cameraman. No, I'm a professional uploader. I feel like I'm on every platform that exists. I started out in advertising. I worked in advertising for about 5 years. Then went in freelance, so I'm a commercial filmmaker, photographer, and then I do YouTube and TikTok and Instagram as like a side income, fun hobby type thing. Kind of taking all the good habits and bad habits I learned in advertising and trying to put them somewhere else. I've like to buy shit, so I like to make money. So I just bought a couple cars that has all been funded from YouTube. So it's kind of like a fun side, just fun money thing. And it's been an interesting ride so far, definitely.
Amazing. And Becki, what is your story?
Microphone check. Okay.
Boom.
My name is Becki. I am Gerald Undun's biggest fan. I have a YouTube channel with my husband, Chris. I'm a graphic designer by trade, self-taught photographer. I've been doing YouTube since 2016. I have no idea how I found myself in video, but here we are. And yeah, I make videos about kind of like lifestyle stuff. I don't really have a niche. Helicopter travel, home DIY, cameras, photography, random camping, anything, all of the things.
And Jon, what about you?
I'm a bit of a content ninja. I like to do a little bit of everything, dip in, dip out. I'm just a maker and a builder. I like to create visuals and storytelling, and I also make physical spaces. I'm the creator of Neon Demon. If any of you came to visit during our opening, you know what I mean. I've been working in the industry for over 15 years, and I've worked with brands from all walks of life, and I just like to make stuff, and that's why I'm here.
So the focus of tonight's event is how to make money as a content creator. I feel like there's a lot of aspirational content creators in the audience tonight, and I feel like the number one question that I usually get asked is like, how the hell do you make money doing this? And it's very difficult. It took a long time, but there's a lot of people who are sitting in front of us right now who have done it, are making a living doing it. So we're gonna share our insights today. So with my first question, Becki, can you tell me about all of the revenue streams about Becki and Chris, all of the places that you make money, and then afterwards tell me the most lucrative one and then your favorite one.
Okay, first of all, you came to my house once and told me how much a YouTuber could make when I couldn't make money from YouTube, and I was like shocked, which was really exciting. But so yeah, I have a couple of different revenue streams. My favorite one is merchandise, so we do products. We do sponsored videos, kind of the traditional dedicated videos, integrations. We have ad revenue on our YouTube channel. We have affiliate revenue. And I think that's it. Probably should have wrote them down. But the most lucrative is the brand partnership. So when a brand comes on for a dedicated video, those are the most lucrative and usually the most fun because we get to kind of build a longer term partnership with a brand and really kind of get to know their marketing goals and their products and then kind of share that with our audience.
And in terms of like your favorite one, you kind of diving in just the merchandise, like you just released a book. You did everything yourself, but just walk us through that and like at the end of, can you answer, was it worth it?
Yeah. So yeah, we do make merchandise. So the book was kind of like a separate thing. We do like t-shirts and home decor products with a separate company. They kind of make our ideas come to life, which is really nice. But the book was kind of like a passion project. Designed that from scratch. Like I said, I was a graphic designer by trade, so it was kind of like a natural kind of thing. Shot all the photos for it, and it kind of went along with this documentary we made for our YouTube channel. And yeah, it was kind of like a last minute thing. We're like, oh, we're gonna make this book, and they were like, oh, maybe we should like sell the book and see if it's like, if people are interested. So we did a pre-order for the book and ended up selling quite a few of them. So yeah, it was a really great project, great experience, but was it worth it? Well, we had a lot of issues going through the production. We actually ordered all of the books that were pre-ordered and paid for, and they showed up in my garage with the wrong covers, and I had to go back and kind of get them reprinted, and because of supply chain issues, it was delayed quite a bit of time. So it was really difficult to kind of communicate that to our audience, like, hey, like these books came with the wrong cover, they're not good quality, they're not good enough to sell at this point. We need to kind of replace them, and then the time waiting for those things, and then of course the shipping costs. There's a lot of stress that kind of goes along with that international shipping. So I think in the end it was definitely worth it, but during it was pretty stressful because you're shipping all of these books yourself, you're stocking them, you're kind of dealing with these production issues, and okay, what do you do with 900 books that have the wrong cover and now they're still in my basement? So I got to figure something out to do with that. But yeah, it's a lot of work to run something like that and to run the pre-order and then ship them and box them and bring them all to the UPS store, and it's a lot. But I think in the end, definitely worth it.
Amazing. So we're going to move on to Patrick for a second. So I kind of prefaced with Patrick that he is one of the most brutally honest people on the internet. I'm kind of curious from your standpoint, how do you feel from like a moral standpoint on being brutally honest about a product or a company versus like keeping a brand happy?
I've burned bridges. No, I just feel like you gotta be yourself at some point. And I've tried to be like a character on YouTube. I've tried to be like the person I think a brand wants to see, or the person an audience wants to see. And it works, you get views, and companies keep reaching out to you and they send you all this free stuff and it feels really good, but you get miserable because you're just not being true to who you are. And I just think that's a terrible place to be. Like, you can have all the money in the world, but if you're not happy, it really doesn't make a difference. I think everyone on this panel can speak to is if you get more money and you're not happy, there's something else going on, right?
Yeah.
And I just feel like being true to myself was way more important than keeping those relationships going, because I think there's enough people out there in the audience side of it that want to hear what I have to say, and there's enough brands out there that are willing, and it's not a risk, it's not like I'm saying terrible things or whatnot, but if I'm honest, there's companies like Lumix, I work with Lumix all the time, and I'm not always the most pleasant about the things that they make, but they trust me, and they know that I know what I'm talking about, that it's worth it for them to keep working with me, because we're still going to sell cameras. I'm still honest to the point where I'm not telling them don't buy this thing, but there are some like camera companies that I don't work with anymore because I didn't like the product, and if that's the way that company works, then I don't personally want to work with them either, to be honest.
Do you feel like burning those bridges or being brutally honest online has impacted your financial success?
So, I mean, it's a little backstory for me. Like, it's not my main gig, right? Which I think makes a big difference. I think if I had employees, if it was my only source of income, maybe I'd behave a little bit differently. But because I have clients and I've been doing this for a really long, 10 years now, freelance doing commercial video and photography, I can take risks online with my brand as Patrick, right? And I think that's where I have the fun, and I do experiments and I try different things. And maybe it's not for every brand, and that's okay. Like, I still get sponsors, I still have affiliate marketing and all that kind of stuff that's going on. And I'm sure, yeah, I could probably be making more money, but I can offset that with the work that I do with clients, right? So it kind of puts me in a different position than if this was full time.
And was that like strategy of kind of being a YouTuber, but also, you know, being a content creator that's making money on the side? Was that strategic? Was that on purpose? Did you do that so that you could kind of have this character that's more honest rather than kind of having to rely on brand deals all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I treat so many platforms like experiments. Like, if anybody knows me, I used to do like a lot of tech and gear reviews. And over the last year or so, I've pivoted more to like movie reviews and like doing video essays, because I got bored doing the tech reviews. I think tech is so good now, camera's so good now, I'm gonna try something different. And so I pivoted doing the movie things, and that's an experiment. And I like to keep YouTube and all the social platforms an experiment. So it's really a hobby for me. The fact that it makes money is amazing, and I'm like, you know, conversations with you, it's like, I could be doing more, and I probably should be doing more, but I'm always cognizant that I'm like, it's gotta be fun. It's gotta be fun, and it's gotta be a hobby, and that's what's my meal ticket here, and I think that's what the audience likes. And the fact that I can do all the client work, and you know, if the client work went away like it did during the pandemic, I leaned into YouTube, right? And if vice versa, if YouTube's not doing so well, I'll just do a bunch of client work, right? Yeah. And so that's kind of my balance right now.
Amazing. Okay, so moving on to Jon. You work with some of the most incredible brands around the world. You've worked with Red Bull, Insta360. How do you get a brand's attention as a content creator?
Yeah, so before I answer that, I just want to do a quick poll here. Who here is a creator? Who here makes their living being a creator? It's about half. Okay, cool, good to know. So this is probably my most asked question, is how to get noticed by a brand. And I want to preface this with a bit of a story for how I started in automotive photography and content creation in general. So I've always loved cars. I've grown up loving cars, and I never really thought it was attainable to be able to shoot them, because it all just seems a little bit out of reach. Like, how do you get that Ferrari? How do you get that Porsche? How do you approach a brand when you don't have any cars in your repertoire? And it's a pretty dead simple answer. You have to just start making the content in that realm. So if you want to be a car photographer and you don't have any cars on your feed or on your website, like, good luck getting a car project. And that could be said for any type of shoot. If you want to get into shooting clothing for Nike, like, shoot something for Nike for free and like get some content on your feed. The way that I first got into shooting cars is a friend of mine let me borrow his truck, and I had noticed that there's this epic Milky Way happening that night. I was on a shoot in Brandon, Manitoba, and it was pretty rare for there to be a Milky Way that south in Canada, and so I wanted to really use the opportunity to capture something epic. And so I parked the truck at this ideal angle in front of the Milky Way, posted it online, not really thinking much, and BMW ended up seeing that. Because just through the grapevine, they had followed me for some reason, and they reached out and said, hey, we love this one photo, can you do that for our new car that's coming out, which happened to be the X3 at the time. So I basically implanted the idea in their mind about what would be good for their brand. I showcased that I could do it by literally doing it, and the next thing you know, I'm working for BMW, capturing the X3, capturing an identical photo, which is their car under the Milky Way. And so these brands, it's not up to them to be creative, it's up to us, the creators, to provide the creativity. So if you can show that through your visual medium, which is what we're best at, it makes the conversation so much easier because it proves your worth, and that's the simplest way to get through the door.
So talking about our kind of like first jobs or getting jobs, I want to move over to Becki. What was your first brand deal? And like, can you just be transparent with us? Like, how much were you paid, and like, how many subscribers did you have at the time?
So we were in a little bit of an interesting position because we couldn't monetize our YouTube channel until we had 100,000 subscribers, and I was like a US permanent resident. So we had like hit 100K, I got my green card, and it was like, okay, we can monetize our channel now. And our audience was used to not having any, there was no ads, there was no like, you know, pre-ads, there was no dedicated video sponsorships or whatever. So I was pretty nervous when we took our first one, but the first one was actually with Moment, and it was a trip. I got paid $5,000 to, and including, we're not, $5,000 plus they covered all of my travel expenses, and we flew to Washington, and we did like a little mountain kind of like trip around the anamorphic lens for the drone that they released in I think it was 2019. So it was pretty exciting because it was like the first paycheck I had ever gotten, but then also I was really nervous because I was like, what is my audience going to think about this? Because we grew this audience with this like authentic voice with no ads, and now suddenly here I am with a sponsored video for the first time. Like, what's that going to be like? But the trip was really awesome, and working with a big brand like that was pretty surreal to like actually get paid for doing something that I love, for making videos about whatever I want to make videos about. So it was pretty great.
Can I add like a question to that? So I feel like a big thing that happens for creators when they do their first like brand deal is they go, now I'm gonna do like 5 other posts that aren't paid so I can like fill the gaps. Did you feel like when you did your first brand deal that you had to like make good for your audience all of a sudden, so that they felt like when you do the next brand deal, like it's okay because I gave you 5 other videos?
Do you mean like not branded kind of videos?
Yeah, like let's no sponsor in it. Like, did you feel this like kind of like obligation to the audience after doing that first brand deal?
Yeah, 100%. I was excited and nervous when we put it out, but then after that I was like, well, we have to go back to the regular post. It has to be the vlogs. It has to be whatever everybody else knows, because I don't want to get called a shill or a sellout in the comments. And so it was kind of the sensitive topic for probably about a year. Every time we took a sponsored video, it was like, do we use this product? Is this a fit? Is our audience going to like it? Is it going to resonate? And is it adding value? And that kind of set the tone for all of the sponsorships that we've done ever since then. Yeah. But there's kind of always been that thing. It's like, is the audience going to be mad that we did this? And like, do I actually like this? Do I feel something about this brand and this product? And so we only do partnerships with brands that we know and love. And but yeah, there was definitely an element of that to like, okay, we need to make sure that we're posting not sponsored. Every video cannot be a sponsored video. They have to be kind of spread out, and we want to make sure that we're kind of maintaining that kind of authentic voice that we grew like 100K to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I want to kind of add just from my own voice here is that it's one of those things where you do this, you hear this number, you're like $5,000, all the expenses paid. Wow, I want to do that. But then in your mind, you're like now doing 4 more videos for free to make good. So really, if you like average that out, now you're really only getting paid like $1,000 for all this extra other work. So it's one of those things that like, yes, you can be compensated very heavily, but there's also like a lot of internal work that you have to do so that when you do the next sponsor video, you have to be like, I'm okay doing this. And this is like a big conversation amongst a lot of the creators where you start to go like, well, Linus Tech Tips. Every single video that Linus puts out is sponsored. Is the audience mad? No, they're getting used to it. People are getting primed to expect some advertisements. It's up to you to decide how much you really want to like tell the audience and like, here's another sponsored video. And at some point, you'll feel the give and take when you're doing this, where you're like, okay, I've done a lot of sponsored ads now, or maybe I am like going back to back. But it is one of these things that I feel like, and I don't know if anyone wants to jump in right now.
I think you also, like, you have to trust your gut, right? Like, we all get offers in our inbox for some service we will never use in our entire life, and they'll waive 5-10 grand, and you got to say no. Like, depending on your situation, like, you got to say no. And I think even if you're small, you'll get the $500 ad read, right? And you're like, will I ever use ExpressVPN? I don't know, but do I want this? Is this really what I want in the early stage of my channel, right? When I'm growing an audience who wants to care about what I have to say, I'm going to throw a VPN at them that I'll probably never use. Is that worth that $500? I don't think so. You're at that stage where you're growing that audience and you're growing that trust level, that even now that we're big, like, we still got to say no to things because you don't want to break that trust with the audience, right? It's not selling out. It's just, you know, when you take a brand like, you know, like Moment or Music Bed, like, they fit so well with what we do that it's not about the money. It's also about the fact that it works within our videos and it's authentic to us, right? Yeah. So I think that's like the key when a sponsor comes in. It's like, does your gut feel like this is right? Yeah. Do you use this thing? Then okay, yeah. Then let's talk money, right? Yeah, and I honestly would love to share a story that I think would be one of my like, let's call it like a weakness or a moment of like a mistake. So I had like a series of videos early on in my like YouTube channel when I had like 100,000 subscribers, and like each video was getting like 1 million views. I had like 4 videos back to back that got 1 million views, and then I did a branded piece for like a language learning
marketing company, and they had offered me $4,000 to do a video. I want $4,000, but I also was running this production company on the side where I didn't need the money, but I was excited that like a company wanted to give me $4,000. But like, did I need to do a language branded piece of content? It didn't really fit with everything else that was going on. And that video only got 30,000 views, and it literally changed the trajectory of all the following videos after that, where the audience was like, okay, now he kind of did a branded piece, maybe he's gonna do it again in the future, or that told the algorithm, okay, maybe people are not as interested in his channel for like a brief moment, and I noticed the like kind of tail off. And so that's like an experience where I said yes to the money, should not have said yes to the money, and it actually did have a pretty big impact on views, growth, and subscribership. So I think there's always like a gut check, a give and take, and like really work with the brands. Like what I learned from that is like, I am only gonna work with the brands that align with me, that speak my truth, because there's so many comments on that one video that people are like, come on, man, this is like really, you're learning German like this way? Okay, so.
What's interesting, the only opportunity there, like I did a Magic Spoon ad once, and it's like, I do like Magic Spoon, but it was sort of like, what does this have to do with, I think I did a video on like a Spider-Man No Way Home or something like that. Like what does Magic Spoon have to do with this video, right? But what I did was like, okay, I saw like a creative opportunity where I'm like, I'm gonna do a vintage like 80s, 90s commercial for a cereal company. That's what I wanted to do. I thought that was interesting. I'm gonna shoot on a VHS camera. So when they came to me like, here's the amount of money we wanna give you, we wanna send you product, I pitched back to them and I was like, I'm gonna shoot this on a VHS camcorder. You guys gotta be okay with it, because the only way I'm doing this if it's creatively fulfilling for me, and the audience won't get too pulled out of my video that is completely unrelated to like low carb cereal, right? Yeah. And then now if you go on that video, like all the comments are like, that was one of the coolest ads I've ever seen. It had nothing to do with Spider-Man anymore. Yeah. They were actually more interested in what I did with the branded piece than anything else. So even if something like that gut check feels a little bit weird, you can also think about like, well, this language thing, like maybe you go to France and you try to learn how to speak French or something. It's like a whole other thing that wasn't something you were maybe using in that moment, but you could turn it into something that's creatively interesting for the audience and for you too, right? So I'm not saying like, say no to everything that you don't use. There could be an opportunity creatively to make a little commercial out of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's important to differentiate what type of creator you are as well, because I mean, all of us up here, we are intrinsically associated with our own brand. But if you're not at that level yet and you're still just creating for companies, the moral ambiguity becomes a little bit more challenging and less clear. So for an example, before I started doing more of these like hybrid campaigns where it's part of my own image being associated with it, I was just being a straight up shooter, like shooter for hire. And I remember I worked on this one project where it was a drone that was coming out in like 2010, and it was complete vaporware. Like we shot the whole commercial on a DJI drone, but it was actually for another drone that tried to compete with them that wasn't existing yet. And so we were just like lying through our teeth, but I wasn't connected to that anyway. I was getting paid, and like the moral ambiguity became less defined. And so if you're intrinsically associated with your brand as a person, it's important to care about what you're showcasing and to make sure you garner trust. But if you're not at that level yet, I don't think you have to be as picky when it comes to creating, because like a paycheck can be a paycheck, especially when you're just starting.
Yeah, so talking about personal brands, I'm going to move over to Becki. Your channel has like a lot of different pillars. One of them being helicopters and cameras and interior design and more, all amazing. How do you sell that to a brand? How do you sell a helicopter camera channel to a brand?
It's really challenging, as we all kind of know. You know, growing your channel, everyone says like if you want to make money and make a business, you have to niche down and focus on a niche. And you know, it has been difficult to make videos about all of these things, basically having no niche, but there are brands that are out there who are willing to support those projects and who also are a really good fit. They might just be a little bit more obscure or maybe a little more challenging to find, but if you can kind of get on a call with them and kind of pitch them and see what their marketing goals are and see if they align with the things that you're doing, then it can be pretty great. Yeah, like some of the brands that we find that we work with the best are not necessarily like the home decor brand, because the home decor brand, we're not home decor enough for the home decor brand, you know what I mean? Like you pitch a paint brand and they're like, well, your channel isn't about, you know, all paint or all renovations. You dabble in it, you do a series here and there, but like there's a helicopter video and there's a camera review. So you're not home decor enough for the home people, but then you're not like helicopter enough maybe for the helicopter people, and then you're not camera enough for the camera people. So like, where do you lay? So, but then there are like brands like, okay, like Millenote, for example, we have a great relationship with them. We plan all of our videos using the app, but like they have been supporting our channel for a couple of years. We actually use and love the product. And so that is a perfect fit because we're using it to plan the helicopter videos and the home decor videos and the camera review videos. So it's challenging sometimes to monetize a wide, broad niche. On the flip side, we never really started our channel to make it into a business. It kind of just turned into a business. And we really have a lot of fun dabbling in all of the niches and having the creative freedom to do all of the things. So we're okay with not being the home decor brand and not getting the home decor brand, deals. So yeah, it can be more challenging, and some people are really on board with it. But then the flip side of it is that if you're pitching a helicopter series to a company, then there's like some liability stuff there too, right? Because you're taking on a big risk flying in a helicopter and making a series, and the brand might be like, well, I don't know, like if something happens, I don't know if I want my brand associated with that. So, there's all sorts of things that kind of go through our heads when we're pitching brands, like how can we do this in a safe manner, and how does this work with them, and how can we meet their marketing goals, but how is this beneficial for our audience as well? I don't know if that answers your question. I kind of went on a ramble.
No, for sure. And it kind of segues into like when we're working with brands, the industry's changing a lot right now. One of the things that I've noticed is like traditional marketing agencies are, becoming less and less like relevant now. And, there's a lot of brands that are working direct with content creators or working with like a slight middleman rather than like, 10 cooks in the kitchen. So you're really seeing like a simplified process across the board. Patrick and I got together recently, and we were chatting a little bit about this, and you have some like really great thoughts on where you're really seeing the industry going. Can you kind of share with us on like where is content going and how does that change for like how content creators are making money?
I think that like the integrated video or like the paid product review is going away a little bit and more in like more like product placement. Like we talk about cars all the time, you know what I mean? It's like it's more interesting to have a car that is the catalyst for an experience rather than a dedicated video about that car, in my opinion. And I feel like that's where we're kind of going more towards, because dedicated videos are a dime a dozen. At the end of the day, if you see like a dedicated paid camera review, they're going to say the camera is good, right? So I'd rather see the lifestyle and the world around that camera and how it brings, your experiences to life and all that stuff instead of the dedicated paid review, because I think we're all just desensitized to it. I don't know if you guys feel that watching other videos even, right?
No, absolutely. And the interesting thing about the digital space from my experience is that, if we go back to like traditional advertising and television, you had years where like a certain format really worked, but now it's like you're saying this like dedicated, little sponsored ad read that worked for like 2 years, it's over. It's not working. Like people skip it now with the chapters.
Totally, and you can see it in the views. Like you can just, like externally look at channels when they do like those like one-off dedicated videos about something, the dive from the regular content that they do, right? So you kind of got to educate your clients and educate your advertisers as well in that regard, and kind of push back a little bit and be like, I know you have all this money and I know you really want me to like showcase this product or talk about this car or whatever it is, but here's a different idea. I'm already going on this trip. I'm going to be doing this, X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
Let me bring this with me. I'll have it as part of the video, all natural. My audience isn't going to feel alienated. It's not an ad read. It's not a sponsored piece. But you're all throughout it. Maybe the video is brought to you by this company or something, right? But it's not the only thing, right? Because people want to see us doing the stuff that we like to do, not just talking about products and services.
100%. I actually have like a great example of like watching a Matt D'Avella video one time, and he like used a Manfrotto stand. He never even said anything about the Manfrotto stand. He just put it up, and like the stand was different in the way the light was used. I was like, I want that stand. I like searched for it online and then bought the stand. And so I was more incentivized rather than him being like, so the Manfrotto 506B972 is one of the best. Like I was like, over if that happened. But when you see it used in like integrated in like an authentic way, that's what you should be trying to push more when you're working with brands, because that's the narrative that seems to be working. What is the lifestyle? How does it fit into your life?
And it's so much easier to keep your voice that way too. Like when you start taking these ads, they send like a deck full of just like talking points. And you're like, I would never say this stuff, right? And so to put it in your own words, it's a lot easier to integrate it naturally into the way you would probably use that product already, right? And so if it's already part of your video and it feels natural as you flow through it, you're not sitting there reading a script. And don't get me wrong, I've read ad scripts and that's fine, it happens, right? But I think we got to keep pushing back, and it's on us to move the industry where we want it to go. Yeah. It's not up to them. We get to decide how ads work and how we get paid, right?
Absolutely.
For the work that we do, right?
I think too, especially with how much time your audience spends with you. I mean, a lot of people spend more time with creators than they do their own family and friends, and they're constantly talking between their ears. And so it's a really weird one-sided relationship where you must have a bunch of like thousands of people that know you well enough to consider you a friend, and at the same time, you don't know them, but you can have a lot of impact on what affects them, right? So it's important to be authentic, because I think a person can really deeply tell when you're like reading something that a brand prepared versus something that's in your own voice.
Absolutely. So one of the big conversation that usually comes up when I'm chatting with content creators is, I don't want to monetize until I have 100,000 subscribers. No one's going to really care about me unless I have those vanity metrics. Jon grew by 100,000 followers on Instagram within the last year by creating incredible content through Reels. And I'm curious, from your standpoint, did that have like a financial impact on your business? Did you get more business because of the new vanity metric?
So you know what metric actually changed the most? Mental health went down. Because the numbers grew, I felt so much pressure to create and to keep chasing that dragon, because I was gaining like 2,000 followers a day for a certain period of time. And I kept having to put out content and like feed the beast, and I wasn't the most happy with the content. And at the end of the day, I thought I was gonna end up at the end of the yellow brick road and be like, okay, I'm at 100,000 followers now. Like now I've made it. Now everything's gonna come to me easily. And you know what? Nothing changed. I can make a little bit more money now. I can charge a bit more of a premium. But in terms of being recognized for my work as a creator, absolutely nothing has changed. The work itself matters so much more than just these numbers. They're strictly just vanity metrics at this point. They just don't matter as much anymore, especially with like the micro influencer who has like sub 5,000 followers who can make just as good content and they're exponentially cheaper. Like, do not chase numbers, because it is a fool's errand and it'll only make you sad. And for a while, like just mental health was so poor because like everyone kept saying congratulations and like you've made it now, and in reality in the background, nothing has changed. So it's important to make sure that you're aligned with what your goals are. And if your goals are to gain X amount of followers, then you need to reevaluate what those goals are, because it's not going to make you happy and it's not going to really change anything when it comes to being a creator.
Subscribers specifically too. Like I found like, yeah, some of the rates went up, but at the end of the day, they still care about how each video performs, right? So that subscriber count is like, if I look at my analytics, it's like 98% of my viewers are not subscribed. So what's the point of that 140,000 people sitting there? It makes no difference, right? And if honestly, like what you said, like if I go back in time, like I'd lock my account at like 10,000. Yeah. Like that was like a prime time all around for like mental health, the work that I was doing. And like I think the future really is micro influencers anyways. We see more brands that are sort of like casting a wider net with smaller creators rather than paying a big premium for one person. Yep. If you get like 15 people saying buy an S5 II, I actually think that's more impactful than one of us saying buy an S5 II, right? I think they're much more into it, and they're. That
seems targeted at me.
Hey, I did a lot of S5 II videos too. Don't worry. But that's just like the example where I think the micro influencer is like key. So if you're sub 10,000 followers, you're like in a prime spot right now. Yeah. Because a lot of agencies and brands and everyone out there and even the audience is starting to really listen to those people even more than they're listening to us, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to it too. When I was kind of starting to build my Instagram following, I had around like 7,000 followers, maybe like 10,000 followers, which again, that's a great metric, but it is something that's achievable for everybody out there on Instagram, especially right now with growth on Reels. And the reason why I got reached out by Corona, the beer company, and they invited me to like work on a campaign. And the reason that they picked me had nothing to do with my influence and everything to do with like the brand that I was building and the content that I was putting out. Because a lot of the times when I'm working with brands, it's kind of like a multi-pronged approach where people are paying for like the distribution through the Chris Howe voice, through YouTube or Instagram, but they're also paying to like relicense that content for them to use in their own paid advertising. And so you can also be really appealing to a brand if you can have this like multi-pronged approach that isn't just like, here's my voice and I'm talking to my followers and you will get people to buy through my followers. That's not, obviously that's not the goal, but you can also, your content can have value outside of like your own voice, because people can then go and use it again. Brands specifically can go and use it in their paid advertisements, in their marketing streams. So that's like a really great way to like, one, double your revenue, but also be more appealing to brands out there.
That's something that I've noticed over the last like pretty much half of the year. Like when I get on the phone with brands, like a lot of them want user-generated content. So I feel like gone are the days of just a dedicated video. So there's a real opportunity there to create a partnership with a brand that's not just advertising on your channel. It's let's make something together, and then like let me license, like you said, content, photos, reels, stories. It could be in their voice, and it's kind of more of like a hybrid freelancer creator kind of situation instead of just like brand creator or like freelancer and then like brand. It's a hybrid kind of moment where you can kind of work together and create something really cool. So I think we can think beyond that, and knowing that the brands want user gen content, mostly photos and reels, you can pitch, and there might be a better opportunity there to land a job because you kind of know what they want.
Yeah, I'm actually talking to a brand right now that wanted to do just an integrated, like a 30-60, and I sent back, I was like, I don't have like a plan right now for my videos for the rest of the summer, but I can make videos for you guys because this is what I do for a living. I do commercial video work, right? But on top of that, even if you're just a YouTuber, if you don't see a fit in a video, you can go to them and be like, as an agency yourself, like you are a little production company. Everyone that is a creator is their own production company. So if they came to you and said they like your work and they want you to make an ad, you can also make an ad for them. So if they come to you with a proposal, come back with your own proposal back, right? With a pitch, whatever it is, I'll make 30 seconds, I'll make reels, I'll make TikToks for you, whatever. Here's a package deal. And you doesn't have to go on your channel. And it's kind of a win-win for everybody at that point.
No, absolutely. And I think we all kind of get caught up in being like the production value has to be super, super high all the time. And what's really interesting and what I would love for you all to just kind of keep in the back of your head is really pay attention to like the ads that caught your eye and that you watch. And so, for example, I just bought this like camper van, and I'm getting all these ads now because my Instagram knows that I have a freaking camper van. So I'm getting, and like the ad that I watched 25 seconds of was shot on a phone, and it was just some guy like opening the door on the 0.5 camera, and he was like showing what the fridge looked like for like the one thing that I'm looking for. And I watched all that versus something that had all these like transitions and graphics. So something to keep in mind too, and what I think is like, I always call it like the Casey Neistat like effect, like that level of scrappiness is intentional sometimes. Like I shoot content to look worse because I know it will perform better, which is like a really strange thing to keep in mind because we all get caught up in being like, it has to be flashy, it has to look pro. And there is a time and place for that, absolutely. There's times where you should be busting out your high-end DSLR or your mirrorless camera to go and shoot that. But at the same time, you gotta know what the goal of the brand is. And that's also what brands are paying for. They're paying for your thought process, and they're paying for you to go, I know how long somebody will watch this piece of content because I know that this will perform better based on your needs or like the audience that's watching this. So that's always a good thing to kind of keep in the back of your mind, by the way.
I think there's a pretty easy way to also humanize branded content. So for example, I just finished a big BMW campaign for the new XM. And if this was maybe 5 years ago, I would have just posted the content just as is. But now we are so psychologically trained that when we see high-end looking content that's flashy, we're like, add next, next, next. So now whenever I post my finished content, I make sure I start it with something that's poorly shot on a phone, just BTS of me capturing it. And that almost tricks the audience, like, look, I'm a human, I did a thing, then cut to the pretty stuff. And by that point, you've already roped them in if the first shot is pretty enough and interesting enough.
I used to call it breaking through by blending in. So the idea is you break through all that ad clutter by blending into what real people do, right? Because like you said, as soon as you see something polished, you're like, screw you, I don't give a shit, I don't want to see this, right? But that's why you're seeing way more TikToks and Reels that all start with a phone. Even if you don't want to use your real cameras, go ahead. But he's totally right, you got to start it with that like UGC vibe. And because I work with clients outside of YouTube, like I do phone content for clients, which is crazy, right? But at the end of the day, they're paying you for your skill set. They're not paying for the camera you can buy at Best Buy. They can go buy those cameras too. There's the democratization of technology. We all have access to cinema cameras now, right? So at the end of the day, it's your talent that matters, right? So whether I'm using an iPhone or I'm using a Komodo, it's me that's using it. That's why you hired me, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if I could just touch on one more thing that I think everyone needs to hear. The top 3 brands that I work with still to this day are brands that I all got while I was sub 5,000 followers. So it's Insta360, Panasonic, and BMW. And that just speaks to the fact that like the numbers don't matter. Like I grew to 100K while shooting a spot for Infinity, and I thought they were going to be so hyped on the fact that I was now at 100K, and they're like, that's nice. Like, where's the video, though? We want to see the video. Like, that's what they care about. Like, these numbers are meaningless to them. So just remember that, like, it's not really about that. It's about the work.
So we're going to be taking a quick break right now for the next 15 minutes. This is your chance to like stretch your legs, grab a water, go and shoot some more content. We'll be getting on the microphone to announce when we're getting back. Up next, we're going to be chatting with my agent, Kristen. She's the one that represents me for all of my brand deals. She is the one that speaks to the brands. She has so much great insight. We're chatting with her for about a half an hour. Then we're jumping into a Q&A with everybody. Now, in this time, I also want you to think about a question that you want to ask a direct creator who's sitting up here. So not one that's like a blanket statement for all of us, but I want you to think like, I want to ask Becki this. I want to ask Patrick this one question. Everybody who asks a question will win a prize. So think about your question, and we're giving away a lot of awesome stuff, including Becki's book, which she brought along today too. So let's take a quick breather right now, stretch your legs, go shoot some content, and remember that
guys,
hashtag.
just really quickly before you stand up, sit down, please. I just want to give quick thanks to a few people. So first of all, thank you to Christoph and Evil Empire for hosting us here. Let's give them a round of applause. That's Christoph right there. He loves his cheeks being pinched, so go up and pinch his cheeks. I also want to really thank Andrew Smith, who brought his beautiful car. Andrew, where are you? He's back there. Andrew runs an amazing company called Shark Media, and what they focus on is creating YouTube channels for brands. And so he's a really interesting person. I think he's worthwhile talking to, so introduce yourself. He's the guy in the LA hat. I don't know sports teams, so. And this is your final call to donate to the charity tonight to be entered in to win the Zion Light.
And that hashtag again is hashtag WeTheCreators002. All right, let's go and do it. I would like to introduce Kristen Snell from Modern Speak. This is my agent, everybody. So I think I give it like a little quick context of just like our relationship, how we started working together, and then we'll kind of jump into like the ins and outs of the business. So you can sit here. This is nice. I always see her face on like FaceTime because Kristen's based out of Calgary, and when we first met, I was actually doing a project with Tourism Alberta, and the first time we ever met was like really, really quickly in like a grocery store. She handed me like a couple gift cards for like things I needed to do in Alberta, but I got brought back for another project where we were in the Badlands of Alberta, where we got to like hang out at this old like spooky Western town area where we just had a night of talking about ideas, and eventually that turned into a relationship where Kristen landed me a job with Tourism Ireland when I really, really wanted to work with them, and she basically did it like within one call, and that I was like, and it was one of the best jobs ever, and then that just kind of kickstarted the entire relationship, built off of trust and her really making things work, because our first brand deal had a lot of like ins and outs that were kind of like weird, and what it really proved, because there was a moment when the rental car wasn't like covered, but then it was kind of covered. But long story short, Kristen just like out of good faith, Kristen out of her cut got it covered, and that really just like built this like starting point for our relationship. So Kristen Snell, everybody. So I kind of want to jump into a little bit of, you know, let's just jump into like the nitty gritty of it. Like, where are you seeing creators just get screwed these days?
Yeah, great question. Can everyone hear me okay? Awesome. So I think like one of the biggest things that I'm seeing is just maybe like a lack of knowledge in reading a contract, and sort of what some of those like pieces of a contract look like that would be really important from a creator's perspective. Obviously, when you're working with a brand, the contracts are always going to be built in the best interest of the brand. So having someone to advocate on your behalf, or learning how to advocate on your behalf to like really review that contract in a way that's like helpful, so that you can kind of push back on the brand. So like some of those pieces are like in perpetuity. That's a really bad word. We don't like that word. We don't use that word ever. We get rid of that immediately.
Can you quickly just tell everybody what that means on a high
It means
level?
forever, essentially. So I've heard some horror stories. I've personally worked with some creators who have unfortunately just green in their career, ended up signing in perpetuity contracts, and 5, 6, 7 years later down the road, this like picture appears again, and it's not meeting them where they're at in their current life. Or I knew a vegan creator who wasn't vegan 7 years ago, became vegan, and then her face was on a billboard with beef jerky like 8 years later, and like she lost all credibility because she signed an in perpetuity clause, and it really like kind of came back to haunt her. And I would say like that's one area that I've been like seeing a lot of, people getting oopsed.
Any other stories of some oopses in the contracts kind of popping up, even in our experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So another thing is like currency can play like an interesting role. Being in North America, a lot of times we'll put forward like USD pricing or Canadian pricing, but we had a situation once where like pounds came into play, and we were like, okay, like I guess this could be okay. And then Brexit happened, and then all of a sudden it wasn't okay because the contract went on for like 13 months longer than when like the contract was signed. And that currency quickly lost some momentum and ended up like kind of coming back and being like, this wasn't actually the amount of money that we signed up for. So that's like another way that's happened before.
No, absolutely. And like in those experiences, like Kristen's always like advocating for me and finding ways to create solutions. And I think really where this like relationship started is that at some point there's like, I kind of want to talk about the point when like you feel like you might need an agent or somebody like advocating on your behalf, which by the way, it can still be you advocating on your behalf, maybe even through like a subsidiary email, because having a third party is a really like strong like, strategic power move in terms of like the way that you're negotiating, that there's someone else that's looking out for you, even if it's you. But for me, I kind of got to the point where like I was posting so much on Instagram, I was posting so much on YouTube that I just didn't have time for these business calls. And like, for example, like Kristen just, a couple of days ago prepared a quote that took like 6 hours. 6 hours. That's 6 hours I'm not creating and making things, and she's jumping on these phone calls. So at some point, obviously you have to like keep in mind the person that you're bringing on, who might be working with you on your business. But at the end of the day, it's really, you got to start to balance that point where like, am I getting too busy? do I need someone to advocate for me? And so these are just kind of things to kind of keep in the back of your mind. So Kristen, what's your philosophy when running your business of Modern Speak?
Great question. Transparency is a huge thing for us. It's one of our main core values. I've unfortunately also seen on this side of the business that a lot of creators get screwed over by their managers. And if you don't have that trust in place and some of those safeguards to like know that if you have a commission deal structure with your agent, that they are in fact, being authentic and transparent about how much money the whole project is, and then truly that you're getting your cut and they're getting their cut, and that, conversation is really fair. Another one for me is like, in a very consensual way, like I don't take no for an answer, but I'm always trying to figure out like if the answer is no because of a budget piece, I always want to try and find a win-win situation for the brand and for the creator that I'm working with. Obviously, being an agent for a creator, you're wearing your hat that you're working in the best interest of the creator at all time. But being in that middle space, you kind of have to get creative and sort of play the game between both sides of like, how can we actually make this work in a way where you're going to get the job, you're going to get paid, but the brand's going to get what they want out of it as well, and they're going to be happy. So if we go to a brand and say, this is the budget for, all these deliverables, and they say that's too much, it's like, well, okay, how do we scale back the deliverables, or how do we scale back some of these other pieces to make sure that we can kind of all work together in a way that really makes sense? So I think just like being creative and not taking no for an answer in some cases until the no is really like no, like let's not like keep pushing on it. But I think like there's been a lot of times where a brand's come back to me and they're like, it's just not going to work today, and I'll be like, but why? Like, is there anything we can do? Like, can we keep the conversation going? And I would say like there's been a lot of times where that conversation reopened, and it was like, we're all just human at the end of the day. We really want to make this work for everybody, and we want to see mutual success. So I think oftentimes if it's just like, let's speak transparently, like what's not working about this for you? Can we make it work? And sometimes we'll be able to, and sometimes we won't. But at least just kind of continuing to try to come up with creative solutions is like always really been a successful piece for me.
I'm going to kind of throw like a different question at you that I didn't prime you with, but it's not too heavy. What do you think like the process of like us working together with from like start to finish, a brand sends in an email, what does that look like? And I kind of want you to speak a little bit to like, how many emails can really happen, and how many emails I don't see. Oh
yeah, so many. So I've kind of, over the years, I've been doing this for 5 years now. I think we've been working together for 4. I've kind of come up with a recipe of like the 6 or 7 questions that I'll ask every single brand. For any of you who work in this space, I'm sure you're used to getting an email from a brand and it's like, we want to work with you. What does that look like? And it's like, there's nothing there. It's like, well, we need to know like, what's the timeline? What's the product? What's the exclusivity? What's the usage? So I've sort of built out these like 7 or 8 questions that I ask every single brand if they haven't already given that information in the original email. So right away, that sort of like at least gets us to a place of like, okay, we can actually have a conversation about budget, or if this is going to be realistic for us. So if anybody wants, you can come chat with me after, and I'm happy to share what those questions are. But honestly, like some emails, some brand deals that we've worked on with major brands have been like 7 emails and a phone call, and it's like, whoa, that was easy. And some like the one that we're working on right now, I think it's like 163. Yeah, it's like a lot. There's also some brands, it's funny, like every time they reach out to you, they reach out to you in a new email thread. So like those ones you just kind of lose track of. But I would say too, just like I'm glad that you brought that up, because I don't know how every agent works, but for me, a lot of it's like translating, like being that middle person. So like you'll send me something and I'll have to like make it brand friendly and give it back to the brand. They'll say something, I have to make it Chris friendly and bring it back to you. And it's like sort of managing like who the different personalities are that you're working with on either side. And that's, yeah, always kind of fun, because there's so much stuff that you don't see. Absolutely. Like that I have to be like, that's ridiculous, that's not going to work. And like I feel like I'm just kind of like advocating for you at all times, but it's not worth your time to know that like so-and-so said this. So like when we see each other like once a year, unfortunately not as much, I'm like, and you'll never believe what happened like 7 months ago, this whole thing. And it's like, we're past it now, so we can chat about it, but there's no use in undue stress at the time.
No, absolutely. And it's one of those things when, something that I've noticed about my personality is I can kind of like, I won't call it like a short temper, but I do recognize that like, let's say a brand comes back with revisions and I just think a lot of them are like unreasonable or unnecessary. I know this about myself, that in the first 15 minutes of receiving that feedback, my blood pressure is up, I will say things that are unreasonable, and like I can like keyboard smash my way through like a horrible email that could burn a bridge with someone. I can't even imagine the amount of times that Lucas has had panic attacks by me being like, and the brand F and this and the foot, and like just messages upon messages. And where I think there's like a lot of value in having an agent is really what Kristen just said there. It's like translating that, maybe that panic attack, that brief moment, into something that is digestible for the brand back, so that you're not burning bridges, that everything is like amicable. Because at the end of the day, like we are artists, and like we really care about our work. And when someone kind of like wants to change it, like there's obviously like a give and take there. But sometimes, and I feel like we all know this, like when you get revisions, it's like, I saw this like little meme one time where it's like, oh, the pain of your lower back is like a little bit of pain, and you have like the pain after a workout, and then it's like client revisions pain, and your brain is exploding. And it's like, it's true, like that can feel worse than like physical pain. And it's like, that is one of the true benefits that I see just in myself, that maybe I should do more therapy and deal with that. But ultimately, I think there's real value in having that third voice translate things for you into something that's digestible for the brand, so that you have an ongoing relationship. Because once you acquire a brand that you're working with, you want to maintain that relationship, because maybe it's not just a one-off $5,000 deal. That one brand could be like hundreds of thousands of dollars over its lifetime if you maintain that. So like maintaining relationships and connections. Like last night, one of the things that Kristen and I did was we hosted like a client appreciation dinner where we invited the clients that we work with in Canada. We took them out for some drinks and dinner just to meet them in person, because a lot of these people you're also dealing with in the digital space. You don't even know what these people look like. And so I'm not saying that you have to do those things all the time, but that just is one of the roles that we play when we're coming up with our strategies on like maintaining relationships. Don't bite the hand that feeds you, especially when you get revisions that are unnecessary. So the translation
Did anyone
part.
record that?
In your eyes, what are the like other value adds that an agent brings to the table for like a creator and for a brand too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like one thing I've noticed is sort of this like level of kind of like, I don't want to say like this to come off the wrong way, because if you don't have an agent, that's also totally fine, but there's this like level of legitimacy almost in a way of like, you've got a team, and like I liked what you said earlier about even if you don't have an agent, create an email alias. They're free, you can get so many on Google, and like make your own agent persona and then just email back from that. Because it's kind of interesting too, where like if you feel like you're sort of like this middleman where you can kind of be the bad guy some days and like really push back on the things, but you don't want to do that from like your Chris Howe persona or for whoever you are, and feel like that you're worried that it's going to perceive back badly on you. I kind of get to like put on that hat of like sort of fixing the fires and putting the fires out on either side. And I think that that can be like really valuable. I think also like day in and day out, like having to speak to your worth can get really exhausting, and having to be like, this is how much money this is, and like speaking to that all the time, it can probably be also feel like really kind of insecure at times too. So I think for me, I'm sort of like, I'm very involved in the brand, and I'm very like an extension of your team, but I'm also sort of this like third party person that can like sit in the space of like figuring out like what the brand really needs, and then kind of going back to the creators that I work with and being like, okay, this is what we're working with. What do you think? How can we kind of like bring this together and make it kind of work for everybody?
Yeah, and just to kind of tack onto the part, like it is hard to sell yourself. Like you're like on a phone call with a brand, you're like, well, I'm dope, I make sick content. Like it feels kind of awkward to say this. That's not how I sell myself, by the way. But it's just like an example of like, not everybody has the confidence to like be able to do that themselves. But if you work with someone, you can find a way to like package what you do. Like we were talking about this like yesterday, where it's like, in reality, it's like Kristen sells humans and their talent to other people, and she works on packaging that in a way that it's like, here's what value we can bring to people. And that's really when you're working with a team and bouncing ideas off of someone, like sometimes we just strategize on being like, what's the best approach for this? What's the way that we can make this work? What's the best creative concept? How can we like even sell them more on just even the original ask that they had? So, you know, what are some other things, you know, I feel like, you know, contracts are like a big part of everything. Like, what are some things that should be in a contract?
Yeah, good question too. So usage and exclusivity are one that I love to talk about, because Usage, if it's longer than your exclusivity, it's almost implied usage. So something that not everybody knows is if someone's going to give you a 3-month exclusivity against all camera brands, but then they're going to use your content 6 months in a paid campaign, that's going to be out there for all eyes to see for 3 months longer than what they've kind of handcuffed you to an exclusivity place. So just knowing that, like, in that case scenario, I always try and get the usage and exclusivity to be the same, or the usage to be less than the exclusivity, just so that you're not kind of like bleeding into like both of those sides. We have a kill fee clause that we add in. This is another area where unfortunately I've seen creators get screwed over in the past. Is you hire a team, you rent a venue, you go out and you spend your own money before you get paid from a brand to like build out what this content's going to look like. And the brand has a termination clause in the contract that says at any point, 10 days, 30 days, whatever that might look like, we can terminate this without cause. If you don't have something to protect you in there that says like, if we've agreed to this and I've signed off on this, if I get to a certain stage, I get paid 50% of what this is, regardless of whether or not you terminate the contract. Other things are like we charge rush fees. So like if a brand comes to us and says, this is the project we're going to do, but it's, you know, we need it between when the contract's signed and when we get our first draft of content is like 2 weeks. We would add on extra money for that, because then you're probably have other projects you've slated in, you've got other people that you're working with that you have to now push back and kind of make like all of those arrangements. So there's definitely like an additional fee for that.
Can you speak more to like how you would charge for like exclusivity? Because like in my experience, when you're kind of like a starting out creator, you just see the exclusivity thing. You're like, whatever, I just want to work with like Lumix, or I just want to work with like Lexus. It's my dream brand. But like one of the things that you always forget, it's like, okay, well that's like 6 months. That's 6 months that I can't work with another car brand. Like tell us a little bit more about that. Is there more money involved?
Yeah, and it's interesting because this whole world, like, there isn't like a guidebook to like this costs this and this costs this. Like it's all we're still all trying to figure out exactly what that looks like. But the way that I do it is working with you for the last 4 years, I can sort of go back through the records of over the years and be like, okay, so in the last 6 months, a year, whatever that exclusivity looks like, how many jobs did you do with a partner that would now be excluded from you being able to work with? What did that cost look like? Now let's imagine that if we do sign off on this, we're going to have to turn down all of those projects. That's the cost of the exclusivity on this. In some examples too, though, like if you were, say, I'm trying to think of a good example. Like there's times where you're like, I'm not going to work, like if you're really into Adobe. Adobe's your editing software, you're like, this is my jam. Everybody knows it, and then another software company comes to you and they're like, work with us. Chances are you're probably not working with like a software company every 3 weeks or every month. Like you're switching, because like then you wouldn't be an authentic creator to your audience if you're constantly switching like that. But if you're like strictly a camera review creator and you're constantly getting reached out to by camera companies, that exclusivity is going to be massively impacting your bottom line. So I think sometimes it just depends on really like how you see that impact happening.
And sometimes the exclusivity can like kill a deal. It can be one of those things where you're like, I know that I get a car branded project every, month. So if I know that I'm getting it every month and you're not agreeing to pay me more, unfortunately, you just can't work together, because at least I know I'm going to get those other 3 jobs, and you're going to kind of gamble on it a little bit, but at least you have the stats to kind of, prove that exclusivity. So really, like, these are things that get slipped into contracts all the time. Brands love to just be like, well, we just don't want you to work with other people. And sometimes it can be as easy as being like, yo, can you just like rip that exclusivity out? And they're like, oh yeah, no problem, whatever. This is just our standardized contract. Because sometimes these brands are like turning over projects so much, they just give you the standard contract, and then you're just so excited to like go and work on the project, you sign it, but it is one of those things where it's like, it can be overwhelming, and some contracts are really long. Like, what is the longest contract you've ever seen?
I had one the other day, it was like 62 pages, or like 40, like sometimes you get one that's like 1 page and you're like,
yeah.
But that's also actually on the other side of it too. If you get a 1-page contract, there might not be enough in there. So sometimes you have to add stuff in too. So yeah, and then.
And also, just on a side note, like for a lot of people who are just starting right now, like a contract could also just be like an email that says like, I agree to do 3 reels for this rate, and then just get them to like reply back saying, I agree to these terms. There's your contract. It still holds up, at least even if it's like in the beginning stages, because it's like, it can be super overwhelming. Like, I don't want you to be sitting here being like, oh, okay, now we're getting into contract. I don't even want to make things anymore. That's not even fun. Like, you will ease your way into it over time. Like, us getting to the point of us working together took years to that point. But it's one of those things where, like, every step of your journey is like a, you know, you will get to that point where you might need that help, and you will eventually get to the contracts, and you'll get to the agent, and you'll get to the next level. So I think those are always like really good things to like keep in mind. So I think a lot of creators don't know what to charge. This is like a really hard metric to kind of figure out, and you can do research, but like, how do you help a creator find their value and find out what's the price tag?
Yeah, that's also a great question. It's like one of those things too, where like we sometimes on the agency side, it's like refer to it a bit as like the wild, wild west, because there isn't like a super set formula to what all of these things look like. But there's also someone like you who's like a commercial photographer, videographer, as well as some of the other folks that were on the panel tonight. That might look very different than if you're a content creator that's just in a space of doing some of those like UGC type stuff that's more like promotional and that too. So the way that I have kind of been forming rates over the years is looking at obviously like the influence, the engagement rate. The vanity metrics have kind of changed things a little bit out there now, but really like working with the brand to find out like what is the value of this piece of content for you, what are you going to be using it for, and then kind of like building out rates from there. So like in my mind, like there's some of these like calculators out there that'll come to you and be like, if you have 100,000 followers, it's $1,000 for an Instagram post, but that's not like, I don't know where that comes from either, and I don't know if I have like a really super succinct answer to this, but my agency, we have sort of like, what is the minimum that you'd be willing to do something for? What is like our party rate where we're like, this is like, we're gonna go in big, and then what is like our middle ground of like, okay, we'd be really happy, this would cover everything, and we get to like take some extra home, and then sort of like figuring out what that looks like for you, and then kind of building it out from there. So there's not like necessarily like a one size fits all in that, and I know that's probably not like a super helpful answer, but.
No, but I think it's also like an important thing to remember. It's like your brand that you're building is like really like the most valuable part of it, because I had a really like, this is a really great example. I was part of a like Mercedes-Benz PR campaign where they flew like a whole bunch of press, some influencers, all the way out to like Gimli, Manitoba, got to drift these cars on the ice. It was like epic. And so I'm going around, I'm talking to everybody at this like after party, and I'm chatting to this one guy, and I'm like, okay, what press outlet are you from? And he's like, oh, I have this like magazine where there's only 500 subscribers to the magazine. I was like, how the hell is this guy here with 500 subscribers? But every subscriber of that magazine is a Chinese billionaire. And so you have to remember that your audience is also like the value of the people who are watching. Like, who are you speaking to? So Mercedes is going, this might even be the most valuable person that's at this event. And then I'm meeting someone else that has 1 million fans, but no one gives, you know, fuck it. At the end of the day, that's like one of those things. So it's like, there's always like a balance between these things. Like, it's almost better to have like 1,000 fans that are like so invested in what you do than to have 1 million fans and no one cares. And that's where like this like whole value of like, well, what is like, how do I charge? Well, it's like, it has the Chinese billionaire is probably going like, I can probably sell 10 Maybachs right now, right? And that's like, that's the value. Yeah. So you really got to consider, it's like, do you have like examples in your portfolio of like business examples? Can you communicate not just like, look how creative I am, look how amazing my content is, but like, look at how many sales I generated from my content. And like, one of the greatest examples that I use and that we use in our sales pitch through like the different documents that we have is like, I did a project with this one company called Black Box. I did the sponsored YouTube video for like $2,000, and at the time I was like super stoked on it. But one of the things that I didn't realize is that I got them 13,000 people to sign up for their website and start like contributing to their website, which changed their bottom line revenue from like a few $100,000 to a few $1 million from a single YouTube video. And it's like, I went back. I was like, I want to change the terms, which is the worst piece of leverage afterwards, to be like, give me more, because I'm like, I'm change your company so much. But like, luckily that brand was like interested in continuing that relationship, and they ended up like giving me a small portion of the company. So part of my compensation was I was like compensated in equity in the company. So they gave me shares in that company, which was pretty cool. But that case study to literally say like, my one YouTube video allowed that company to go from like Class C funding into a B funding, which then raised the equity, which raises like everything else in their company, is one of the greatest sales pitches that we ever have. And so it's one of those things to kind of keep in mind is like, have business examples, find ways to communicate that out, and those are the things that we do. We strategize, like, okay, we're working with this brand, what are the pieces of content that they want to see that will sell them on the lifestyle, that will sell them on the idea, and what is like the business case studies that they're going to be like, oh yeah, Chris Al, let's work with him, that's cool. So
yeah. Just two things to add on to that is there's ways to like add value to that partnership. So by giving them like extra, like sometimes it'll be like a 3 to 5 image carousel post, then giving them like 10 to 12 photos, 10 to 15 photos, giving them that extra value. And maybe you say like, if you really like these photos, then this is the cost per photo. And then you can kind of like build out what that bottom line budget looks like, actually be able to add on a little bit more. And another thing I'd say is like right now I'm seeing a lot of brands reaching out and they're like, well, our CPM is this, and we're only doing $20 per this. And I think that gets really frustrating because like there's definitely a stage within your career where that's going to work really well for you, or affiliate marketing is going to work really well for a lot of people. But like Chris said, like don't forget that like your value isn't defined by the number of people that watch something, and the algorithms are really tricky right now. So when you said that you had like those 4 videos that did 1 million each, and then you get a video that does like 5,000, if you're being judged only based off of like a CPM metric, that's not going to be a full value of like how you actually maybe moved the needle or were impactful to your audience or to that brand as well.
Yeah, and there's like a lot of different pieces of opinion that you hear that people will say you're only as good as your last video, or in my opinion, I think you are your body of work. You are the average of all the things. Like the days where I'm feeling like, oh man, brands aren't going to want to work with me, doesn't mean that they haven't seen content over the last 5 years, 6 years, things that they also loved. Like sometimes we land brand deals and contacts and you know get the next project from something I made 3 years ago, not just the last thing. So just remember, you are like your body of work. You are everything that you like present over your entire lifetime. So don't, like if you have one piece of content that doesn't do well, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that brands don't want to work with you. My last question for you before we bring up the rest of the guests that we had tonight is like, what's the one piece of advice for a creator when they're like working with a brand that you would share from your perspective as an agent?
I would say just like get the confidence to advocate for yourself. Like make a list and write down all of the things that like would be a successful partnership for you before you go into it. Like if you were to say like, I will walk away from this opportunity and I'll feel proud, I'll feel like I was compensated well, I'll feel like I made something that I got to be in control of the creative of, and sort of figure out what that looks like for you. If you do work with an agent, I would say find somebody who you really trust. Like you and I are friends. I feel like sometimes we're each other's therapists, sometimes I'm your translator. Like there's so much that goes into that relationship. It's like one of the most intimate conversations. I talk to you more than I talk to my mom. Like you find someone that can really advocate for you, and if you're not there yet, then find ways to advocate for yourself, because a lot of times as a creator, it's sort of like us versus them with brands, and it shouldn't have to be that way. It should be that you're both coming to a place where you're both getting the mutual respect, and you're able to find the ways that you can kind of get that out of it.
Amazing. Well, let's do a quick round of applause for Kristen and all of that insight. I'd like to welcome back Patrick Tommaso, Becki Peckham, and Jon Simo. This is our chance. Everybody who gets their questions answered will win a prize. So does anybody now have a question? Are you asking any, here, let's welcome everybody up back. Yeah. Becki, let's get you on up here too. And John, wherever John is, amazing. Is it directed at like any specific person? Yeah. Why don't we have Kristen answer this question? She's looking at contracts all the time.
Yeah, for sure. I think like too, like you don't know what you don't know, and sometimes brands, like if they've worked with you over so many years and something always looked the same way, but then they learn from someone else, like, oh, if you add this in, maybe they won't notice. Like, it's unfortunate that sometimes people try and sneak things in there on you, but if you have this relationship, and relationships are obviously very important, and you're like, I want to keep building this relationship, I want to keep working with this brand, then figure out like, is this a deal breaker for me? Can I get it removed? Can I charge more? Just trying to figure out how you can still make it work in a way that like you feel valued and not taken advantage of, but they also are getting what they are hoping for out of it too. Like right now, a lot of brands really need UGC content. That's why like that's what you do on the side, you said. Like they need that. They need so much content to go up all the time, so they're probably looking for ways to get more out of the partnership than maybe they had realized they needed before. So just don't forget that just because a term looked one way forever, it doesn't mean you can't go in and like now increase the rates or kind of change things on your behalf too. Don't let the brands control you.
All right. Right here in the front. Do you want to direct it at any specific? Okay. That's been so the question is like, how do you stay happy as a content creator when you're treating it like a business? It's not an easy task. Like when you start to monetize your creativity and the thing that you love, you can kind of have this like battle with it, because it's like, the reason we all became creative is it's like, this is our outlet for joy because we are making money in some other place. And the moment you start to monetize it, the thing that you love is now work. And like at one point in my life, I had this like weird talent where I could turn everything that I enjoy doing, which was like wake surfing, which was like holding a camera, which was like whatever it might be, I found a way to make money at it. And I literally was just working all the time. I didn't even realize that. And I found myself in a state of just not being that happy, but I was like stoked I was able to monetize it. So there was this dichotomy with the whole thing. So like I'm in a place now where I can like, there's days where I wake up and I go, you know what? Today's YouTube video, I'm treating this like a job. I'm waking up, I clock in, I use my creative outlet to go and make the video, and then I clock out at the end of the day, and I'm done. And then there's other days that I'm like, this is the best job on the entire planet. And you have to remind yourself of like feeling gratitude around it. Like I just got this opportunity where we got to go to like Italy with a phone company, and I got to watch like this soccer match, and I was like sitting there being like, this is incredible, and taking a moment not to be like, oh, this is work, and like, because you always have to remember like, who was the kid that wanted this so badly 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and new normal can set in very, very quickly. So just reminding yourself, it's like, don't forget the person that wanted this a couple years ago. And if you can kind of like check into that, that's how you remember that's how you stay happy in this job. I'll let one of you guys, or whoever's here, to decide the next.
Chris, I just want to take a second to talk to the live stream audience real quick.
Absolutely.
So we're giving away Insta360 X3, and so I'm going to say the secret phrase now, and the phrase is a bag of f-stops. A bag of f-stops. And that's because when I went to film school, they sort of pranked all the newbies by saying, your first task is to go collect me a bag of f-stops. People would just walk around like chickens with their heads cut off, like, what the heck is that? So the code is a bag of f-stops. Type that out in the chat. You'll be automatically entered to win the 360 camera.
Amazing. Patrick, I'll let you pick the next question.
I'm just going to go like this. There you go.
Would you say there's a limit to how generalized the niche could be if you're going to try to be a content creator that wants to like make it a living?
As someone who's jumped niches quite a bit, and I still, like I've done watch videos, I've done computer reviews, I've done movie reviews, I've done travel stuff, I've done car stuff. I feel like you got to stop trying to target your audience and start targeting YouTube. Someone told me that early on when I started doing this. Like, don't worry about your subs, don't worry about like your baked in audience that you think cares about what you want to say. Go broad, and you know, if you want to make a car video, go after the car audience. Like, YouTube wants people to watch your videos. Stop saying the algorithm's screwing you and stuff. They're going to try and find who wants to see that video. So if it's a good piece of content, they'll find that audience. Personally speaking, I don't care about a niche. I'm already planning my next sort of switch because I get bored. So when I get bored of a topic, I'm going to move on to something else, right? And that's my sort of take on it. Just do what you love in that particular moment. And we all, we switch our things up all the time, what we're into. So it's okay to do that with your audience too.
So we're going to take a question from the live stream right now, and this one's directed at Jon. So Jon, specifically, do you ever feel embarrassed asking a friend or a brand for someone else's contact information?
Yes. To answer that quickly, yes. It's always a bit of an awkward conversation, especially because a lot of creatives hold their own contacts close to the chest, and they feel that if they showcase somebody else's work and they either don't do a good job or screw them over or just don't act with sincerity, then it's reflected back upon the initial creator. So now I'm more open and I try to give as much work as possible, but definitely in the earlier days, I felt some hesitation to share my contacts with people because I had done that in the past and they had performed poorly when working with that brand, and that was reflected back upon me. That happens less and less now, and so I like to just give as many people as much work as possible.
Amazing. Becki, I'll let you pick the next question from the audience.
My question is for Becki and Kristen. So I am good at getting products from brands. They'll give me free products, but I find that like when it comes to actually being financially compensated, that doesn't really happen very often. And so I'm like stepping into my worth and not doing things for free anymore. And I've had a mattress brand approach me, and it's like a luxury mattress brand. It's worth $10,000, and I responded and I was like, that's cool, but like we need to have a conversation about compensation. And so they've asked for like a crazy list of things, a year of usage, 20 photos, 3 grid photos, and I don't know how to respond in a way that, like, I understand their side of the picture, that it's like a good value, but also like I need to be paid for my services. So any advice on like how to respond or like how to create a package that also hears what they're saying, but is also like, look, it costs money and this is what it costs.
Yeah, and just for the live stream audience that's listening, just to kind of quickly summarize here, it's like, how do I transition from like product to also getting product and getting paid? So, and that's directed at Becki and Kristen.
I'm gonna let Kristen take it because I feel like you're the pro at this one.
No, that's a good question, and I think like it's really hard because you can't pay your bills with a mattress, so it's like always really tricky to, and hopefully brands can understand like hopefully where you're coming from too. But I would say like if there's like a long laundry list of stuff that has to be done, then actually Lizzie has a really good course where it's like literally value out like the hours that it's going to take to do all of that stuff and come back to them and say like, I appreciate like the opportunity to get this mattress, but from my perspective is I'm going to have to do all of these things, and this is at the end of the day what it's going to cost. And then you can say like, I'm willing to do this for a less deal because I can now take the product into consideration that comes along with it. But finding ways to like bring value back to them that's going to like make that compensation be able to be worthwhile. And like, don't be afraid to say no. I think like the word no is really scary sometimes, but if you kind of get yourself into a position where you're always just saying yes to product all the time, then it gets hard to sort of get out of that place. And if you say no to them but go to another mattress company and say like, this is the value that I can bring to you and this is how much it's going to be, they might say yes, and then you don't have to feel like you've had to work with that company that's not willing to see your value and see, give you the money that you deserve to be able to create that.
Yeah, I think definitely what you said about don't be afraid to say no, because sometimes there are red flags in those emails where maybe the brand doesn't value what you're offering, and if the laundry list kind of outweighs the benefit for you as well as a creator, like, is the $10,000 mattress worth a year's worth of like exclusive things and like you really stressing about the content? Like, it might not be worth it, and if it feels better inside to say no, like if you think about, okay, if I say no to this, does it make me feel good, then maybe that's the way to go. But definitely like, yeah, communication with them and say, here's the value. And if they come back and say no, then maybe it's not the best fit, but that's obviously up to you.
Also, I'd be curious if you made an email about your agent and you got your agent involved and said, jumping in here for, I don't know your name, Autumn, jumping in here for Autumn, look, this is what it's gonna look like, see what happens.
And just one of the other things I wanted to tack on there, it's like the brand's going, oh yeah, this is a $10,000 mattress. You know for a fact it's not, they're charging $10,000. It probably costs them maybe even less, maybe even $1,000. And the markup on mattress, I know, is absolutely crazy. So now really you're trading your time for like $1,000 of their hard cash invested into that product. So you have to also keep that in mind on that. And it's like, let's just be honest, like if you wanted to sell that, no one's buying a secondhand mattress really. Like it's one of those things too, so even if you wanted to get $10,000 of that mattress, like you'd be lucky to sell it for 5, right? So it's one of those things to kind of keep in the back of your mind that like, people always, like sometimes I do brand deals where, oh, okay, well maybe I could sell the product later down the line when I'm not using it, but you know for a fact it's maybe the value is getting cut in half. And so these are all just other things to keep in mind, because brands love to be like, market value of it's $1 million. And you're like, come on. John, I'll let you pick the next question.
Yeah, actually, my question is for Jon. Something that I really like about your content is how you mentioned you kind of humanize the content, you show a lot of behind the scenes. Something that I often struggle with is actually documenting that, because I get so caught up in thinking, okay, I got to do a really great job on this, and oftentimes it's just me or small teams, and I just kind of forget about documenting it. So what is your approach to it? Do you, when you look at a project, you say, I'm actually going to carve out some time to make sure I do this and not get involved in the whirlwind of just like hit the ground running on the project? And how do you approach capturing all that and thinking about that if you do that?
You can summarize it very quickly or just jump into it.
Yeah, so the question was, how do I humanize my content, and how do I worry about capturing BTS while on a hectic shoot? And it's sort of like a threefold answer. One is fake it. So there's been so many times when I'm on set and it's literally impossible to capture anything. And so I will either fake it after the shoot is wrapped and just like recreate something even without the cameras rolling, just that quick 5-second clip. Or I'll have a 360 camera running at random times where you can just like set it and forget it and then do all sorts of reframing in post. Or bring out somebody who's willing to help you and be pretty focused on BTS, but maybe they're a student or upper coming. Like, don't discount your level of talent compared to somebody below you. Like, they'd be happy to just watch you work and capture content for you. At the end of the day, it's really just about like a single shot that could tell the entire story. So just like have your phone on you, quickly grab something, fake it, have a camera running in the background that you can forget about, and just think about like what the core value is of that story. So like what's the thesis of your entire project in a single frame. And like you'll get better and better the more you practice with it.
So we have another question from the live stream. This one's directed for Kristen. What's the best way to reach the right person in any company that you're trying to potentially work with or collaborate with? And that's from Brian Del Prado.
I actually found a tool recently called Wiza, W-I-Z-A, and it works with LinkedIn, and it actually pulls like people's phone numbers and emails right through from LinkedIn. So one way I've gone to find people through LinkedIn, sometimes like we'll work together to go through like the DM route to try and find the right person. But I find that like being able to go onto a resource like LinkedIn and putting in the brand and then going to the people, finding like typing in influencer marketing, anyone who might be that decision maker that's working with the brand, and going that way, or even finding like agencies that then are representing those brands as well. I find that like in my personal experience, I'm working a lot more with actual like agencies, PR agencies versus the brands direct. Whereas like some other creators who have those really long-term relationships might be working with the brand direct. So those are kind of two ways that I would go about that.
Patrick, I'll let you pick the next question from the audience.
That's actually for you. My question is, when it comes to licensing for video content or photos, do you have like a set percentage you charge the client based on the scope of the work, or does it change depending on what they're using the content for? Like, let's say they're running it for ads versus a social media post.
The question is around licensing. So how do you charge a client like a licensing fee? And for people that aren't familiar, if you shoot for a client, you can also charge a licensing fee for that. So it's not just like hand everything over and let them do whatever they want with it. You can be like, this covers digital for 6 months, or this is for an out-of-home billboard for a year or something like that. Usually, I mean, it's very case dependent, like each project, but I ask, where's this going? How long is it gonna be there? And what's the estimated impressions? And then you should come up with like a CPM essentially for each niche, right? So it's like for digital, for out of home, for like YouTube, all that kind of stuff. Basically digital and out of home essentially, right? Like print and whatnot. Usually stuff isn't print anymore, of course, But digital, you want to set like a license fee and a CPM based on what they're doing. And also you got to gauge your client size, right? Like you're not going to charge like a mom and pop shop the same as like TD Bank or something, right? So I wish I could give you like a specific number, but there's like so many variables there. But just ask for the size of where they're going to put it and where it's going to be, and try and come up with your own CPM rate. And if you Google CPM rates, you can kind of find some good baselines.
There's a handy tool. It's AOP.org. It's the Association of Photographers. You put in your base rate, and then you can select a bunch of different locations and sort of use cases, and it'll like pop out a fee at the very end. I find the fees always like way too high for Canadian companies. So if it's like $2,000, probably what they have is more like $100. But it can at least give you a bit of a starting point, and you can start to understand like what makes it $2,000, like the fact that it's going worldwide versus North America versus Canada. So just check out AOP.org. It's helped me a lot.
I had used that, and the numbers were like pretty crazy. So I was like, oh, I don't think they're gonna pay this. And I got caught in perpetuity, and it was for a bank, and I only charged $500 an image on top of.
Now it's everywhere downtown.
Pardon?
And now it's like everywhere downtown.
Dude, I don't even know where it went, but it was Tangerine Bank and
Yeah.
Bike Share Toronto, and I was just like, I love it. Because I didn't know who the client was, they didn't tell me. I was like, just show up and shoot, and then after I was like,
Yeah. So, Kristen, I'll let you pick the next question from the audience.
Oh, you shut up. You're standing.
So I'll direct this at Chris, but whoever wants to answer it can go ahead. Marquez Brownie recently did a video where he accepted every single product that was in his inbox in a month. And at the end of the video, he made a good point to just not accept products if there's like some sort of contractual agreement, like if you're going to do a gifted collab, for example. So my thought to you, especially for new content creators who maybe aren't able to leverage either their content or their following or whatever, what would you say to new content creators who are maybe considering doing an exchange of product or content?
And are you kind of referring to like there's like a contract in place for that?
So it could be both. So sometimes the brands want to be guaranteed a piece of content and there's a contract, versus sometimes they just say, like, here's the thing, right? Obviously you as a content creator have a value, so it's like, how do you judge when it's right to do versus wrong to do?
So the question's kind of like along the lines of like when a brand reaches out and they just want to do a collaboration in exchange for a product, like I guess it's like almost like a trusting your gut kind of situation. Like when is it right to do, when is it like not right to do? It's kind of a bit of a tricky game. I mean, the first question you should just answer is like, do you want the product at the end of the day? So like if you want it and you will trade your value as being a content creator or your audience in exchange for said product. Like I got reached out by like a portable espresso company. I was like, I want the product. And then they're like, well, we're not going to send it to you. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I can like, I was like, well, I don't really want to post about it. It's like in this situation, I think I'd just buy the espresso machine instead. But like, it's one of those things where like sometimes I could have just like found a way to like organically integrate that product later on. So like, I would rather in that situation is like, send me the product and maybe somewhere down the line without any obligation, I will integrate that product in like a meaningful way that's fun. And like that's really how brands should approach it. Is that how they do it? They always want some sort of like guarantee on photos or some contractual obligation of like, you're gonna talk about this. And so one, trust your gut. If you want the product, then do the exchange. If it's one of those things where it's like, you're doing it, but then you can sell it later and maybe you can get some money for it. Like really pay attention to the value of that product and if there's like actually an appetite for like the after gray market of that product too. So like that's your own consideration there. But I think it's like one of those things at the end of the day, it's like you are going to be the only person that is going to like know like deep down if it's like that's the right move. And there's so many arguments for the case too, because you could say, well, if a camera company is sending you a camera and then you can use the camera and promote it, well, that camera does maybe add value to your business because you don't have to now go and buy that camera. Or maybe that's your chance to show that you can make camera content so that you can show other camera brands that you make camera content. So like really just like know your why as to why you said yes. Because I think a really easy yes is to just look like you're successful on the internet and people are like, whoa, did you see? He's working with X, Y, and Z. He's working with the travel espresso company. Man's on the up right now. And so like you really have to decide like what is your why for like accepting that like product collaboration? And then really if it is for like the vanity of it, which in like all fairness I've done. I mean, like look at me, I got a Corona. Everyone knows I'm working with Corona, but I got like a single bottle of Corona or something like that. Like maybe that wasn't the move, right? So just things to keep in mind.
Can I add something to that? Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, you go first.
I mean, that's the exact same thing. I was going to say I'd be really careful signing a contract for free product, but if it is something that you want to do, I would actually, instead of signing their contract, is send them a product acceptance agreement instead, which something I do all the time. If a brand reaches out and they're like, hey, like we want to send you this thing, I will basically say like, I can't guarantee that this is going to show up in anything. Here's a PDF that I've created that kind of outlines, you can send it, this is not an exchange of services. It may show up in our content, it may not. We decide when and if we talk about it. If you want specific content for a specific date to go live on a specific time or images, then that costs a fee, and then we can, set up a call. So it's very clear in that document that if you're sending me a product, there's no guarantee that it will ever show up in our content, and if it does, that's just a bonus. But kind of that covers me and gives me some peace of mind if I'm accepting something that, there's no gray area where they're gonna email me in a month and be like, yo, I sent you this $5 thing, like where's the content, you know what I mean? So it's just keeping a clear communication with the brand and the product, and it's just, kind of gives you a little peace of mind there.
Yeah. I was going to say something similar to that, but the other thing too is in this case scenario, if they're not paying you a fee, then you can go back to them and say, well, this is what this is worth to me. Because sometimes they'll come to you in the $10,000 mattress case with this whole laundry list of stuff to do. You could say, I'm interested in the product, but I will do it for this instead of like all the things that you've asked me to do. And then in the case scenario of like a contract over email of like some kind of agreement, or what Becki just said is like much better than an actual fully formed contract. I would never sign anything like that if there wasn't a fee involved.
Yeah, and I think the peace of mind around it is like very, very valuable, because it is like to get reminder emails from a brand being like, remember that suction cup car mount I sent you? Real story. Where is the content? I'm like, I'm working on it, okay? Maybe soon. And then it's just like one of those things that like it eats at you after a while, right? And so you don't want to always have that in the back of your mind. And I think the peace of mind of like a contract like that, or something that says in the email that you are only doing this maybe for it to show up, is like way better.
And just to play devil's advocate, I'd say if you're a creator starting out and you're not bound financially to need to make money from all these projects, say yes to everything. And that's why you get to experiment. So all these projects you say yes to, you get to sort of learn how to talk to a brand, which is going to be very important. The stakes are usually very, very low. You get creative freedom, and you get to just sort of experiment with how it is dealing with a brand, and you get to put something on your feed. And like, you should be experimenting nonstop. Typically, there's going to be a bit of a brief from the company, and I think having constraints like that are sort of the crux of creativity. Like, the question is, if you were to work with this brand and they had no brief at all, like, would you even do it? But the fact that they're telling you to do certain thing, it allows you to work within the constraints and actually create something on time to a client and get it out there.
Amazing. Let's do Becki. Let's pick another question here.
Why does Canada seem to have more than its fair share of creative influencers?
Is that directed at anybody? Patrick, do you want to speak to this?
What was the question?
Why does Canada seem to have its like
More than its fair share of good influencers.
yeah, more than its fair share of good
We all
influencers?
talk about it. I don't know if we've ever come to the actual conclusion of why.
I have some ideas.
Yeah,
but
I mean, we've talked about ideas too. Like, we grew up in, like, I think a lot of us came from small towns too, which I think is interesting. Like Chris and I, and Jesse, who works out here too, like we all came from like the Aurora Newmarket area, and it was like we were all into music, and like music kind of pushed us to cameras, and then cameras pushed us to making content. I think we're just a very creative culture too. Canada's just like creative overall. We have actors that come out here. We have so many musicians. We have directors. We have every walk of life. It's just a very creative culture that we've sort of been grown up into, and so I think that's probably the main part of it, right?
Yeah, there's like a great book that I read one time called The Talent Code, and it talked about how this like one island in the Caribbean really like produced all these like amazing baseball players. And it all stemmed from the idea that like there was one baseball player that was like extremely successful, and he was like driving his Escalade around like the baseball diamonds, and all the kids saw him and said, oh, I can do it too. Like, I really think like when one person is successful and they send the elevator back down and bring somebody else back up to that success, you start to have this idea where it's like, well, I look like that person. I also do these things. Like maybe I can do it too, and that's like a level of confidence. I also have these like extra layers to the whole idea that like because Canada is such a cold climate, we're stuck indoors for 6 months of the year. Like what else are you gonna do? You're kind of bored because you don't want to be outside, so you do creative things. And I honestly do think that's why we have the Justin Biebers and the Drakes and all these other people. It's because like not only does Canada have programs that like fund these like amazing creators to go global, where it's like you got factor grants, you have like all of this granting system that our tax dollars pay to like encourage people, but you also just have like a bunch of people that literally are looking around being like, oh, Patrick's successful, I'm kind of like Patrick, I think I can do it too. And I think there's like a multitude of reasons why Canada is successful, and like that's kind of a big reason for it personally.
And here's a hot take. Maybe when you don't have to worry about healthcare and paying $10,000 for breaking your arm, you have a bit more brain space for being creative.
Yeah, absolutely. Kristen, why don't you pick somebody from the audience?
For Jon, brain space, do you ever put hard limits on how much deep work you do at a certain amount of time? Like 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours editing?
Can you define deep work so I know that we're on the same page?
Like it's hard to define, but I would guess like shooting wouldn't really be deep work unless you're on the set, but like setting up for the shoot wouldn't be deep work. Putting your files or rendering all your files wouldn't be deep work, but actually putting everything into a timeline and color grading would be deep work. Yeah.
So I think if I understand, the question is how much time do I put into deep work? If you know, tell me, because I don't have an answer for that. I've burned out so many times. In terms of deep work, I think like any given human, whether you're creative or not, has 4 hours in a day to like do actual work. It's how you use those 4 hours. I find that it's all about getting into flow state easily, and so like setting yourself up for success, not having distractions. I use noise canceling headphones all the time and binaural beats, and I try to like put everything else that could distract me away from me. Because you'd be surprised at what you can accomplish in like even 15 minutes of deep work when you don't have like a bunch of things buzzing and ringing around you. Also, if you really like the thing you're working on, I find that deep work becomes pretty effortless, and that's a pretty good gauge for if I'm actually into a project or not. So if I just really hate it and just can't get into that flow state, that sort of adds a filter to future projects of like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. And so I think in any given day, it's 4 hours of deep work max. And so I try to create some balance by having a pretty good morning. Like I carve out 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours at night where I just don't look at my phone, I don't think about work, and then I just really get into it and focus on that like 4 hours.
Yeah.
When do you know when to walk away from a project?
The question is when to know when to walk away from a project.
Like I can just keep working on something and I'm enjoying it, but then sometimes it's truly finished, but you're just tinkering for the sake of tinkering because you're in flow state, for instance, and it feels really good to continue creating. Yeah.
I think it's important to recognize when you've hit 98% because that's the easiest part. The last 2% are going to be pretty much impossible to ever finish. And so think to yourself, will the client ever know? Will the audience ever know? Like, is it really worth my time, sweat, and potential burnout to like get that extra percentile? And so I think when you've showed friends and family and they have an amazing reaction, it's good to remember that like there always will be that 2%. Take that with you for the next project. But like if you just hyper obsess over it, that is the cure. Like that is the direct way to burnout.
Yeah, and actually, Patrick, you and I have talked about this sometimes. That like even your 60% or your like 80% is someone else's 100% that they're putting into the project. And so like kind of like what Jon was also saying, it's like sometimes like based on the expectations of either the client or someone else or what the project like. Is this the exact amount of effort that this project needed? Because probably at some point, it's just pride and ego that's trying to get to that like last little part where you're like, well, just add the lens flare. It doesn't matter. No one, the person's literally going like this. So it's like, you gotta pay attention to those things. And like, you know, as corny as it is, it's like done is better than perfect. Like, put the thing out, move on to the next thing, because you're going to be increasing your skill set after every single project. And so at some point, it's just not worth the like stress and hassle of everything.
Yeah, really quick. Thank you. Chris and I call it the law of diminishing returns, where it's like, is the extra effort to like sit here and like obsess over the thing like actually worth it in the end? And like, if it's going to make a really big difference, then yes, it's worth it. If it's going to make the tiniest difference, then it's not worth it, and just let it rip. So law of diminishing returns is what we always say. Is this good enough? Law of diminishing returns. Okay, we're done.
Yeah, I'm literally going to comment on all of your videos being like, I feel like the shadows need to be slightly more teal in this video.
Blocked.
Finally. Let's do like 2 more questions, and then we'll jump into the giveaway of the camera. I'll let John pick, and I will let Kristen pick.
Let's go with Mercedes.
So my question's for Becki. So kind of like you, I'm heavily into design, and then I also self-taught myself photography. So what's kind of like your best advice to combining the two and kind of pitching that to brands? Because I can do photography and I can do the design element too, but sometimes they just want one over the other. But I want to pitch both.
Right. From like a freelance standpoint, you mean? Yeah. So the question is, how do you pitch a brand both photography and design in one instead of just being the photographer or the designer? It's kind of a tough sell. For 10 years, I did freelance graphic design and photography, and that was kind of my thing. I was trying to curate a list of clients that would let me do both, because for me, being a designer, like the freedom of being both is to be able to come up with a concept, shoot it, and then like do the layout, design it, right? So I'm not sure if I have like a really good answer, but I think looking for brands who kind of just need it all as a one-stop shop package. Like some of the larger brands are probably already going to have like an in-house designer or a photographer or like somebody they want to work with. But if you can find a brand that maybe needs a little bit of help on both sides, maybe they're a bit of a smaller brand. Unfortunately, sometimes those guys have smaller budgets too. But yeah, if you can find somebody like that who's kind of like the unicorn, chances are they might have some other people who might need similar work done. So if you can kind of, build that portfolio and say, hey, I shot this, I came up with this concept, and I did the design work, then that's great. And if you can't find somebody right off the bat, then I would just start coming up with ideas, projects, like make a brief for yourself, like a fake client who needs like a shot of this hotel, and maybe they need a brochure or a poster done, and then start compiling those images with text, and then say like, hey, I can make this thing, and do it in a couple of different styles or your style, and then you can kind of shop that around. It's kind of like with the whole creator aspect, it's like you get a free product and you kind of can flex those muscles of making an ad around this product when you're starting out. So it's the same kind of thing, like if you're looking for a really specific client, then you can make up your own stuff to direct your kind of portfolio to those clients, and then hopefully they'll come around. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah. I'm also going to give everybody the chance that if they haven't like entered the contest to win the Lumix S5 Mark II, this is like your like last reminder to use the hashtag and tell us why you think that you deserve the camera. I know that everyone's might be like deep into their phones right now, but we will take our last question, and Kristen will have the honor of picking.
With the hat just here on the, yep.
I have one question for the creators. A lot of creators say that when the metrics go up and the numbers go up, their mental health goes down. So for smaller content creators out there, like, is it worth chasing those numbers, or do we just go at our own pace?
Go at your own pace.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You made a really good tweet a couple weeks ago about like you can't share that one.
The numbers consume you, right? Like I think everyone that's had a YouTube channel gets to this point where you're just constantly opening YouTube Studio and you're just refreshing. Is it a 6 out of 10? Is it a 1 out of 10? Is it 10 out of 10? It doesn't fucking matter. No, like at a certain point, you made the thing. It's out there. You can try and tinker and change your title and your thumbnail, trying to get the most out of it and suck all the juice out of this piece of content. But if the audience didn't want it, they didn't want it. So you got to really move on. So now, there was a really, really big successful YouTuber, and I won't even name drop them, but like one of the biggest tech YouTubers in the world, who just said, I don't look at YouTube Studio. And I was like, what? That's insane. He's like, yeah, maybe I'll look in a couple weeks if it's a sponsor or something like that to see how it did, but I put it up and it's done. I'm on to the next one. And so I started doing that in small like chunks. So like now I'll do a video and I'll wait like 3-4 days to even look at it. And if it did well, amazing. What a great surprise when you open it. If you didn't, it's so much past the point of fixing it that there's nothing you can do about it anyway, so you completely move on and you're on to the next video. But I think chasing those numbers and like the slot machine of Instagram Reels, like some pop, some don't, some pop, some don't. They're doing that on purpose, right? So you can get sucked into that and it'll totally put your mental health into the gutter, or you can just focus on what makes you happy and make the content you want to make, and it will find an audience if you're happy. That's the most important part.
I've started implementing that as well, just like not checking. And the sooner you can disconnect yourself from how, like, what the video's ranking at, or how many views it has, or how many subscribers you have, and start focusing on like the projects you want to work on, your passion stuff, it makes the whole process of YouTube so much more enjoyable. And I think you can also avoid burnout that way too, because the more you're obsessing with the numbers, the lower your mental health is, and the more energy you're taken away from like creation. And that's kind of why we all started YouTube, right? Is like to make fun things, to have a good time, to really enjoy our jobs, and hopefully make some money along the way. But yeah, once those numbers start sucking your creativity away, then the job becomes a lot less fun, and then what's the point?
Yeah, there's actually like a line in Macklemore's like Can't Hold Us, where I think he even says like, I gotta find a better way to get out of bed instead of checking every new hit. And so like, I think that's like a thing you can get really consumed by constantly like refreshing to see like, oh, 10 more people watch it, maybe 100 more people watch it. It's just truly not like worth your time. Like maybe look at it once. If there is one small tweak you can do that will add value, do the tweak, move on. But you can get so consumed, and it's probably just your ego that's like reviewing those things, that's like, it just wants to get the little dopamine hit, squeeze one more even dopamine hit out of the whole thing, where it's like, I made the thing, come on, why don't you love it? It's like, it's just the way the world is. It is what it is sometimes, and it's like better to just like make the next thing and find joy in the process of the entire thing. Because if you can find joy in the process, that's what will keep you happy.
I think it is interesting to pay attention to what I would call some of the cheat codes for creating content, and you will see trends that pop up over time for like maybe why video popped off. And it's not gonna happen every single time for the same video, but when I post the stuff that I'm the most passionate about, I do not give a shit about if it's gonna do well or not. I'm just happy to get it out. But if I'm doing a brand video, it would probably be in my best interest to like get the maximum engagement to drive up future contracts with them. And so it can be helpful to know like, this could use trending audio, the right hashtags, the importance of a thumbnail. Like, don't get obsessed with those things, but it's also important to understand the tools in which sort of drive the medium itself.
And like, I think one of the perspectives that I always like try to remember at the end of the day is that it's very easy to get consumed by like the metrics all the time. I think one of the big reasons that we are doing these community events is that you have to remember that like every single person that like liked your piece of content or watched your video is like an actual human being. Like if we wanted to like go off of metrics of like this event was an Instagram post and there was 100 people here, in the eyes of potentially whatever you're looking at, you might think that that's a failure. But I look at this entire audience right now and be like, this is one of my greatest successes of the entire year, and I genuinely mean that. So like, let's just take a quick reminder that like, if you get like 1,000 views on like a video, imagine 1,000 people. That's like selling out history downtown. And so like, just have that perspective. Take a quick moment to like take a step back and zoom out and just remember that like sometimes even these metrics that you think are small are actually huge wins. And I feel like this might be just like a great spot to like end it. I just want to say thank you to like everybody who came out this evening, to all our guests. Let's give them a round of applause for all their knowledge. And also, we're so grateful for everybody that came out here tonight. We want to continue doing more of these events. If you want to stay updated on them, I'll be posting about them. I think John and I will be posting and be collaborating on the next one, so make sure to follow us. Follow everybody here. Come and say hi to us after the event. And thank you so much for your time and energy. Like, moving your body here, we do not take for granted. So thank you so much for showing up and just like lighting us up in the same way that we can share with you. So thank you. Do we want to do the giveaway right now?
Well, just a quick thing. I just want to let you guys know that we do have a really great Discord called the Creator Community. It's been amazing to connect with other like-minded creators. I love giving feedback on work and really helping people grow. So if you want to join that, it's discord.gg/creatorcommunity. Don't hesitate to reach out to all of us on social. I think we all like talking to people. And there's a question that I want to leave all you guys with that might help sort of focus people that don't quite know what to do. And the question I want you to ponder is, what is the problem that I'm helping a brand or product solve? So what is the problem that I'm helping a brand or product solve? And that should be the thesis for how you create content and how you achieve brand deals. Like, they have a problem, how do you solve it? That's how you niche down. So just think about what that is for you, and it might help you sort of focus your efforts. So like, thank you so much for being here, guys. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take like a 5-minute break, or sorry, like maybe 15-minute break, just hang out for a second, and John and I are just gonna review the posts, and then we're gonna pop on here to announce the winner. But go grab some water, hang out, network, meet each other, and we will give away the prize here in the next 5-10.
And I think you guys, this is the very last chance to buy raffle tickets to win the other Zion Light.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you got your question answered, go over to like the giveaway table, and we can like find something to give away. So the winner of the Insta360 X3 is Pace Lees. Thank you for finding our secret code. What was the code again? One more time.
A bag of f-stops.
There we go. Congratulations, and thanks to everybody who was watching on the live stream. Really appreciate it. And we would like to announce the winner of the Lumix S5 Mark II, which is the literal camera that both John and I use.
Let's really hype this up. Let's get a drum roll going.
Okay. The winner of the Lumix S5 Mark II, coming in at a price tag of around $3,000, is Bo Sani. There we go. You are the winner of the camera.
Why don't we just say a quick thing about her? Yeah, here. So we chose Bo, first of all, because she had a very real caption talking about just her sincere interest in creating and become a travel content creator. She's been shooting currently just on her phone, and her content's already amazing. And so we really connected with the fact that this could change her life, and she seems to be creating really meaningful content. So I hope you enjoy the camera. It is a life-changing camera where like your quality is just like exponentially higher now, and it's just gonna inspire more creativity. So enjoy the camera. I can't wait to see what you do with it.
And this is just I have like one admin thing before my like emotional side of like just being grateful for everybody here. The seat that you took, if you can just like pack it back up and put it back on the wall, that would mean the world, as like this is just sweat equity that everyone's putting in to make these events happen, because all the money is going to charities. So there's a lot of people to thank tonight, so many sponsors. So like thank you everybody who was assisting in the event. John, thanks for being an amazing partner on this project, and seriously, thank you all so much for coming out tonight. It really truly means the world to us. There's going to be many more of these events, so thank you again for coming. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and just a few more thank yous. Thank you to everyone that volunteered their time to help today. That includes a lot of my friends. You guys didn't have to do that, but you really like to help foster creativity and community, and I can't thank you enough for that. Thank you, Kevin and Karis, for running the live stream flawlessly. They're with FWI Media. They did a lot of cool concert stuff. Thank you to Andrew for the insane Lambo. I can't wait to see your guys' shots. I've already looked at a few of them, and they're bangers. We are going to have a Google Drive where you can all upload your content, both photo and video. It's in the email. Fantastic. So you guys already have the link. I'd love to see what you guys do. We're going to be posting a bit of a recap and like hype content with everything you guys have done, tagging you, of course. And please just like tell your friends about this. We want to keep this growing, and like we're not even sponsored yet by anyone technically, and so the sky's the limit. So just like keep helping us grow this. We'll keep helping by giving back to you guys.
And last admin is that we are going to be like heading out in the next little bit. So if you can pack up your chairs, and then we will open the door, and then feel free to stick around for a little bit, network. But by around, let's say like 10 o'clock, it'd be nice to have you guys out just so that we can get out of this space and have a great night. So drive safe. Thanks everybody.